It's about that time where we do one more Shacknews award for the road.
I'm ready.
This one is the award for best narrative game. Narrative game meaning a story. Tell us a good story. You can tell us a story all sorts of ways, right? You can tell it through environmental design. You can tell it through characters interacting with each other, settings, gameplay itself can push narrative forward. So there's a lot of games that are going to be eligible for this award. Uh, we'll start the nomination out right now. We'll throw it to the panel. Who wants to jump in first?
I don't see this one winning, but I really have enjoyed Returnal's narrative. If you can balance procedural content with an intriguing narrative, as definitely, if not more definitely than Hades did last year, then that is quite an accomplishment.
Mhm.
And that game, it creeps you out, it builds dread, it makes you curious, it makes you thoughtful. There are multiple endings. I was just a big fan, and I'm a really tough critic when it comes to video game narratives because I think the vast majority of them are not great. And I'm especially a fan of game narratives that actually play to environmental design rather than environmental design and gameplay systems rather than just making me read a lot of dialogue and watch a lot of cutscenes, which there are other mediums for. So I'll go Returnal.
Yeah, I get all those points for sure. And yeah, Returnal falls into that category. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of different games in this category.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
who wants to nominate something?
you know what? I'll do it again. I'll nominate It Takes Two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just narratively driven throughout, and the entire game is a metaphor for relationships and communication. It's well executed too. Like the performances are excellent. Like the narrative is solid enough.
I think it goes beyond just like metaphor. Like sometimes it slaps you in the face with the narrative. It's like,
Yeah.
here's a broken down vacuum cleaner that the husband didn't fix, or here's a hammer that the wife didn't fix and left it. Her whole toolbox was in disrepair. Like so many relationships are, hey, you didn't do that thing, or hey, like you forgot this thing, and like especially because this game is about a marriage that is failing. Like the two main characters. This isn't really spoiling much. The two main characters are have decided to get a divorce, and then they get shrunk down and have to work together. That really does drive things, and those multiple times during the game where they're still talking about getting divorced once they get out of it. It just, I think, is it does a very good job of talking about that simple concept of divorce, but it does it in a very, very delicate and intricate way. So I agree with that nomination.
Yeah.
I'd probably vote for it myself. Anyone else have
I
anything they want to add on It Takes Two? Or Ozzy, you're about to do something else?
well, I was gonna say I'm very torn between several narratives this year, but
Mhm.
we're gonna have people that are gonna argue for Psychonauts 2, and we're gonna have people that are gonna argue for Life is Strange. But I feel that I'm probably gonna be one of the only ones to argue for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. And when I saw this win at the Game Awards over the weekend, at first I dismissed it because I'm just like, I kind of liked the Psychonauts 2 narrative a little bit more. But here's the thing with Guardians of the Galaxy. People are going to dismiss it on its face because it's a Marvel game.
Mhm.
And because it's like, you know what, it'd be like voting for the most mainstream thing, whatever. But that's really, it's not fair to just dismiss it just because it's a Marvel game. Because the story they tell about hope, about grief, and about loss is one that if it's literally anything else, I think people would be raving about it a lot more. And honestly, I absolutely love that story they told, and I think it's not going to get its fair shake. And we mentioned this in another category, but like the voice performances really add to it, and the turns that it takes that they can extend it out to like a 20-25 hour game without it feeling overly repetitive, and also the way that it can turn depending on the choices you make actually make me really, really appreciate it that much more. So I'm gonna argue. I'm gonna say Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy should get this.
A solid nomination. Greg, you want to tell us why Psychonauts 2 should take this?
Yeah, I think. I mean, like Aj makes a lot of good points about Guardians of the Galaxy. I also started playing that late last night too. Just I wanted to play a little bit of it, and there's some deep cuts in that game. As a Marvel fan, I'm really happy with that. You would never get in a movie. Like Wendigo, like really, this is amazing. Like what is he doing in here? This is incredible. Like this, that stuff is. But that's beside the point. Psychonauts 2. I think Psychonauts 2 has a lot of unique. It has like one of the most unique narratives in like video games. It's very similar to like Assassin's Creed, where you literally go into someone's mind to mentally go into someone's mind to pull stuff out or make them overcome their fear or whatever issue they're having. But my wife, working in mental health, loves that game even more for how it presents people that have mental health issues and how they can overcome those issues, and its message overall regarding the status of mental health in people is really, really interesting. And not a lot of games do that. They don't try to teach a lesson that often. I think It Takes Two does a little bit, but I just think just because of the overall mental health theme and going inside people's minds opens up so much creativity.
And also, like, Psychonauts 2 also explores the ethical implications of that. Like, is it right to violate somebody by going into their mind in such a way? And the way they explore that more and more throughout the story, I think, also deserves recognition.
There is so much good about Psychonauts 2's overall rollout of its story. I think, for lack of better words, that's like the one of the only times this year where I had a big cry during a video game. And like the twist, and there's some twists in that game that like I've seen plenty to know like when something is coming, but like the twist in that game caught me by complete surprise. I think the the layers of narrative in that game, the way they pull it back but don't show you everything, the way they hint at things, the way it comes together, the way that twist comes together is definitely a lot of almost seeing it and then suddenly they show the whole thing and it's like, what? It's that is an intense emotion. That game is an intense roller coaster of feelings. And I think that there are a few other games. Like I know that there are games that probably hit in that way for other people this year. I've heard of them, but I don't think anything hit me near as hard as Psychonauts 2 did.
Yeah, it's definitely fits this category like a glove. So it makes sense that we have several people backing it here for nomination. Donovan, do you have any?
I do, and it's the same game I pulled my Best Actor nomination from. Life is Strange: True Colors. That Life is Strange really is like low key one of my favorite like modern franchises. This game series of the last several years. They're always the games that make me think the most, the ones that stick with me the longest after I roll the credits. And True Colors is no different. Um, I was just all over the story from beginning to end. To give you just a quick brief on what it's about, pretty much Alex Chen, she moves to a new town and she finds herself having to look into the mystery of her brother's death. She has the psychic power of empathy. She can read people's emotions and even feel them herself to a degree. And I don't know, like I consider myself to be a sensitive and emotional person, and I connected with Alex in ways that I did not think I would going in because the character is nothing like me in real life. But it's very good. It's a moving story. Once the narrative got going, I couldn't stop playing it. And like I mentioned with other entries in that franchise, once I was done with it, I really couldn't stop thinking of it. And like TJ said for Psychonauts, I think this was the only game that actually made me emotional this year. Halo came close, but that was just nostalgia. But this this story actually took me there. It is very good. So Life is Strange: True Colors.
There are
There
a
are
couple things that I really liked about True Colors, and one of the things was that second chapter on, they really hit you hard with how much of an impact that Alex's brother had on that entire town and everybody in it, and it also puts the pressure on Alex to kind of live up to that legacy. But
Mhm.
more than that, also Donovan speaks to the main mechanic of like Alex being able to have that super empathy, similar to the way that Psychonauts 2 brings up the ethical ideas of invading people's minds. Alex has to be careful about trying to tap into her power because if she goes overboard with it, like she could lash out at people. Like if somebody has like pent up rage, if she taps into that rage, like you're presented with the option of do you relieve that person of that rage and like do you kind of save them from it and take that on for yourself? But the risk in doing that is if you take on that rage, you lash out at people and you turn them against you. So there's a big ethical risk. There's a big risk in making that choice, and I love that aspect of True Colors more than anything.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Nice. Do we have any other nominations here? Oh, The Forgotten City. Chris is nominating that.
Oh yeah, that's another very good one. I think I spoke about that in Best RPG, but that's another. Like I said, I think it started as a Skyrim mod. It's set in like ancient Rome, time loop game. Very like under the radar. One of the best, better games this year. And
It's called The Forgotten Cities. It's not that surprising it went under the radar.
it's true. Yes,
Ew.
it was the forgotten game.
Sing them.
Yeah.
Sing of the
I'm bringing
year.
my D tier one-liners tonight. But
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think it deserves a nomination for this category. This category's stacked. Talk about some awesome games here.
stacked.
Returnal, It Takes Two, Guardians of the Galaxy, Psychonauts 2, Life is Strange, True Colors, Forgotten City. Forget about it. All these games are great. All these games tell awesome stories. Sam, are you gonna?
I would love to. I know I don't know if it fits the category exactly, but I did really love the narrative in Halo Infinite.
What? Get
Yeah,
out of here.
I know. It's very surprising. I'm sure it will shock everyone, but I think that 343 was able to do a masterful job at going from Halo 4 and 5 to Halo Infinite, and then kind of capping off 20 years of story, whilst also starting new threads for new adventures and new stories that we're gonna hopefully go on in the future. Just as like the background of like what's kind of going on there. But then the story with the weapon and Cortana and Dr. Halsey and the pilot. I think that the whole narrative that's going on there was one that I know Dono said that he came close, but I bloody burst into tears at the end of Halo Infinite. Partly because it meant so much, and partly because like just of the story that they told there. And then
There's like a sense of hopelessness in the story for most of the game. Most of the NPCs you encounter are like, it's like, you know, Adam in Metroid Dread, where they're like, you got no shot here, Master Chief. Like you're gonna lose. You know, like it's you. It's quite literally you versus the entire world or universe.
Chief wakes up 6 months after humans had lost.
Yeah,
and so humanity had given up. Like
it is by far the least optimistic Halo game I've ever played, just from the jump. You know.
But to that point, I'm so glad you brought that up, Asif, because there was a moment I had in my game last night. It was when I was in the open world, like just finished the mission, heading to the next, and like the weapon and like the pilot, the other main NPC talks to you in your headset all the time. And I had finished the mission, and the pilot comes in and he's like, "Chief, I've got to ask you, like, you don't have any family in this, like, your people are gone, blah blah blah." He's like, "Why do you keep doing this time and time after again?" And Chief just goes, "It's all I know." And I was like, "Damn." I was like, that's my guy right there.
There are these conversations with the pilot that are way deeper than you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
They have no business being that deep.
And it's like there is just a constant struggle in that game that I did not feel as motivated in other Halo games. Like this game like actually drives you. And there's this undertone in like, you know, that answer that Chief gives there is not entirely true. But he's very glib about it.
Yeah.
And,
he's reserved. He holds back in some of his answers. Yeah. But and the answers that he gives are great if you're new to the franchise. But what he holds back for those who are familiar with the story and lore, you're like, no, I know what he wants to say there.
Yeah.
He's got to put on this persona because humanity, they need his hero, and that's all he knows how to do.
I just like it because, like, so often, like, humanity is like he's the savior of humanity. Things are going great. Like Master Chief's awesome. This game is very much set in a dire situation, and I like that. I like that it's not just everything's great or hey the war's going great. It's like we lost, and the pilot frequently is like I don't know, like he loses it at times. Like he actually has mental breakdowns in the game at times, and like Chief is there, and even the weapon is there at times to like reach out. There's another moment. It's not much of a spoiler. The weapon asks the pilot how he's doing, and he's like, "No one's asked me that in like X amount of time." And I was just like, "Yeah, there's little things about it." I don't think it's going to win this category, but I definitely think for a Halo game, this is one of the best narrative Halo games ever shipped.
Yeah,
I just
and
wish
just the audio logs dotted around that kind of fill in some of the backstory. I thought that was quite neat. I've
And
always
we
liked
talked
that in
about it in
games.
another category, but the way that the enemies shit talk you is great. They push the story forward without you having to actually interact with them. But yeah, we talked about it in another category.
Okay.
I just wish the
but
game
yeah.
did a better job at, like, for someone, because there's definitely people coming in who've never played a Halo game in their life, or for me, like, I can count how many Halos I played on, how many hours I played on, like, 2 fingers. I have no idea what's going. It does such a terrible job at explaining what's going on, what's happening. I mean, I know there's like what 13 games, like there's a lot of games, but just a 2-minute recap just to give you caught up for anything. I was so lost when playing this game. I didn't know who like what the Covenant was. I didn't know what the Prophets were. I didn't know. I don't. What's they're throwing so much stuff at you, and you're like you have to. It's almost like you have to read the novels and play all 5 games to fully understand what's happening. But they didn't even.
If you
I
watched
don't know about
Godfather
that.
3 and you hadn't watched the first 2 Godfathers, wouldn't you be confused too?
Yeah. I just why not put like a.
I think it's kind of a whack argument to make. Here.
Well, just like why not? Well, Psychonauts put like a previously on and like for 2 minutes tells you what happened in the first game. I would have loved to have some of that about like the Spartans and the war and the Covenant. That could have been really easy to do. I think have Cortana voice over the war they've been fighting for God knows how long. That's all.
I mean, Metroid Dread had like a recap like that. That was helpful for people that didn't know. I mean, I get what Asif's saying, and I get what you're saying, Greg. I think, yeah, part of the charm and like part of like the problem for Halo Infinite is its fan service, for sure. Which isn't like a bad thing, but it can be difficult to like just jump into the story, especially so deep, and it's definitely going away from what it was too. So it's like not having the context for like.
I had the
invoke a
opposite
game here real quick.
experience.
No, just real quick. I want to invoke a game here, real quick, because it is an open world game of an iconic franchise. Breath of the Wild does not tell you shit. Breath of the Wild just plops you down and says, "Go, kid," and it's still great, and it does fan service. You know,
but it's not like a sequel or that. Like
Yes, it
Zelda games like are their own.
They're the
entity
self-contained.
within-
Yeah, I mean, there's people who break down the lore when you get really nitty-gritty into it, but yeah, they're all self-contained. Like you don't need to play Link to the Past to understand
As
what's going on in
someone
Wind
who's
Waker.
completely new to Zelda and to Halo, I did not find it frustrating whatsoever. If I like something, it just encourages me to dig more into it and to listen more. So like I get it. Like I get that perspective that you want that recap. Like I'm not trying to dismiss that. But something that I appreciate is like if I really like it, I'm going to seek out information, whether that's playing the previous games or whether that's YouTube videos or summary articles or whatever. I just think that that's something that I get it, but I think that's too much to ask. Like there are guides out there that make you list like what Marvel movies to watch in which order because you're completely lost if you don't follow a certain sequence.
Or like complaining about a Lord of the Rings book because you didn't read like The Hobbit or something.
Yeah,
like,
read the other ones. Yeah.
That I feel like a story that takes place over multiple pieces of artwork it's gonna feel disjointed if you just jump in at the very end. But I get that they could have done a better job of making that more accessible to new players. But yeah, I don't think, to Bill's point, I don't think it really mattered that much. And the same thing in Breath of the Wild. I don't think it really affected anyone who hadn't played a Zelda game. But for someone who has played almost every Zelda game, there is so much fan service in that game, Greg. There's so many references to the 8-bit version of that game in the map of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild.
And Ocarina of Time and
Ocarina
Wind
of Time.
Waker
Yeah,
and
go to the Temple of Time and see it.
I actually
shambles.
wrote an article about that after E3 2016. I was like, oh, here's some Easter eggs I noticed just from playing this game for like 20 minutes.
When you see the Temple of Time just completely destroyed, that says more than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Okay, go for it, David. Sorry.
I get where you're coming from, Greg. I just had the Halo for me has always been a franchise where I played 1 and 2 and I liked them, they were good, and then I just kind of moved on. I haven't really paid attention to them since. I didn't I think if you focus too much on the fact that this is like the nth one, then you can get overwhelmed. But I was just like, they'll tell me whatever they need to tell me, and I just kind of caught on through osmosis from there.
I do
That's
feel
just
like
what I
if
did.
you, I do feel like if you keep moving forward in the game, it explains
Yeah,
itself.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
I definitely feel that way. I mean, I understand why Greg's talking about what he's talking about, but
Yeah, I
The
get it.
game is
yeah,
set up
if you
as a
just keep
mystery.
playing, yeah,
Yeah, it is. It is. I also think that,
yeah.
like, I don't know, Halo Infinite, and Sam, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I played a little bit of Halo 3, and I feel like Infinite kind of did what 3 did, where, the ending of 2 was what it was. And, like, some people liked it, some people didn't, but in 3 they were like, let's not dwell on it. Here's like this other conflict. And if here's some ties, you can make those connections or not, but it's not going to affect your enjoyment of this one. That's kind of what I got from some of 3, Sam. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I felt Infinite did that as well. Like, I didn't feel like I had to go back and play Halo 5 from, whenever that came out. I was able to just jump right in and figure whatever I need to pick up, it'll tell me, you know.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, and you're right. There is a lot. Like, there's a ton of lore there. There's like, I think that's why they didn't want to try to attempt to do a recap, because there's so much there. Like, you have to like get caught up on Cortana and the history there, and the history of the Spartans, and all this other stuff.
They tell you exactly, like, when you find the weapon, they're like, hey, here's the deal with Cortana, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, and that's really all I felt like I needed to know,
And the audio logs do a very good job of explaining the events before the game started. So, you're going to hear it from the Grunt's perspective, or the Banished perspective, or the Spartan perspective, depending on which ones you find. And I think that goes a long way. And we mentioned it, those propaganda towers that are in the game, they help push the narrative forward. Like, I don't know.
There's a lot of storytelling.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah,
I will
it's
say-
not an easy
I will say
task.
this.
Yeah.
I will say this. That's one part where Psychonauts 2 does a really good job, because it has been a long time since the first Psychonauts came out. And they do a very compact, very fun, and very informative little last time on at the very beginning of that game to get
Sure.
you caught up in a reasonable way.
This
I
is
really
also-
appreciated
That's not
that.
why I'm going to vote for Psychonauts 2, though.
Right.
I am voting for Psychonauts 2, but that recap has nothing to do with why.
Oh no, I was just saying I really appreciated that.
Yeah,
It is
I get
also-
it. But for
it's-
me, in
it's
this
kind of an-
category, that doesn't matter. Like, we should
Yeah.
be judging the game story, not
Yeah,
the
on its
previously
own
on
merit.
puzzle.
Yeah. I think that, like, it's apples to oranges. If like Psychonauts 2 is almost entirely narrative driven. Halo knows that it is first and foremost a shooter, and you could ignore the story if you want to, and so it presents a story in a way that makes it digestible for people like me who are like, "What? I just want to shoot the thing." And I think, but that's to its strength, right? Like, that's, if it was anything else, that's one area where Diablo 3 fucked up. They made you stop and pay attention to the story too much, even though they were giving you gameplay resources that depend on momentum. It didn't make any sense. Halo, I think, is catering to people who drink up the lore, and also people who just want to play a really fun open world first person shooter.
So, are there any other nominations, or are we set to vote here? Right now, I'll just run down the nominations in case anyone forgot. Returnal, It Takes Two, Guardians of the Galaxy, Psychonauts 2, Life is Strange: True Colors, The Forgotten City, and Halo Infinite.
Good list.
Ozzy, you got
because
something?
because I normally don't lead these off, I just want to say off the bat, I'm pulled in 3 directions with this vote between Guardians, Life is Strange, and Psychonauts. So I'm going to do a preemptive pass, if I may. You know, you know that expression, "You're torn in twain." I'm torn in thrain. So I'm just
Got
going to
it.
do a preemptive pass.
Ozzy with the preemptive pass, because this is such a difficult category. I feel you. Unless Chris's opinion has changed, I believe he's voting for The Forgotten City. So we'll kick off with Chris. I'm also gonna wait, see where this thing's going. We all can't do that, though. Blake, are you sticking with It Takes Two?
Yeah, I might as well. I think it is an enjoyable narrative. I mean, I'm honestly surprised how many good points were made about Halo Infinite. I did not see that coming, and it almost swayed me. But I don't know. It Takes Two story is what compels me to continue that game. I want to find out what's going to happen to this couple. I want to hear more shtick from Dr. Hakim. I want to. There's also a lot of colorful characters in it, like anthropomorphic objects, things like that as well. So it's more than just like these 4 characters.
The narrative design goes into the level design in that game, and I think that's really cool. Yeah, like I don't know. I think it was best multiplayer.
Co-op.
Deliberating that. No, I was just talking about our multiplayer deliberations. I talked about how in Halo Infinite, I didn't really care about stories in Halo. I don't. The fact that I actually care about this story means something, because I normally don't give a crap. It's gun shoot thing, I win. The end. This is actually a good story, and it deserves to be nominated at least for this. Sam, are you sticking with Halo?
I'm going to stick with my guns and go Halo. It moved me and left me excited for more.
Bill,
It Takes Two.
Ozzy is already preemptively passed, and he's in deep thought right now. TJ.
Psychonauts 2. That game is a high of joy, a high of sadness, a high of all sorts of emotions, and it comes together so incredibly well.
Yep. Greg.
Gonna go with Psychonauts 2. As much as Ozzy made a good case for Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm enjoying what I'm playing. The combat's a little but like I feel like they're trying to harper on the MCU, even though it sounds like they wanted to be different, but they still had to cater to the MCU kind of style and like
it starts that way, but it does not end that way.
Okay, I haven't beaten it yet, but I'm gonna do Psychonauts 2 because I haven't beaten the other one yet.
Yeah, I mean Psychonauts 2 really stands out this year. Donovan.
I'll stick with my guns on Life is Strange True Colors.
This is a close one. David.
Tim Schafer and his team are fucking great. Psychonauts 2.
Okay, Ozzy.
Well, it's down to me, is it?
I mean,
God, I love what Guardians of the Galaxy did with the ensemble cast, and how you knew those characters going in, and yet you felt like they substantially grew by the end. But for the purposes of this vote and where everything stands right now, I love Psychonauts. And even at the time at the Game Awards when that award went out, I said I thought Psychonauts 2's story was better. And it's harder to say that, but I think I still feel that way. I think I'm going to go with Psychonauts 2.
Good news, Ozzy. I agree with you for all those reasons. I think mental health is a very hard topic to address in the video game format. And to Greg's point earlier, the personification of mental illness, or like actually making it a tangible thing that people can fix, or that you can have these essentially Ghostbusters come into your brain and clear out. I like that. I like that element. I like that they're pushing for people. They're sending a message that, mental illness is not forever and can be addressed. And I think that's an inspirational message that deserves high praise. So I'm voting for Psychonauts 2. Hey, we gave them an award, Greg.
Hey,
I'm happy.
How about that? It took a while. We got around to it, Tim Schafer. Congratulations. All the folks at Double Fine. I know they worked on it for quite some time. But our best narrative game of 2021 here at the Shacknews Awards is Psychonauts 2.
Incredible! This is where the first Psychonauts met. This is where it all began. No, Raz. This is where it all ended. My name is Raz. And today is my first official day on the job.